Sweet 16 is the sweetest number there is. Tyler, what did you do for your Sweet 16?
I do not remember, which is probably a good thing. So,
Probably because you're a guy. But you know what we're going to do for our Sweet 16?
what?
Another debate.
Oh,
Oh, that's when a sound cue would have gone in with our debate theme, but we don't have one.
no.
So
Next time.
next time on our 28th podcast.
For anyone who listened to our first debate, it's basically me and Hajj going one-on-one. Mofo has prepared a series of questions for us to debate, and after each round, he's going to award points that actually matter, and there will be a winner. I'm hoping to
Yes.
extract some revenge since Hajj
Yes.
beat me last time.
And the winner
Last time
gets
Hajj won, yes.
Yes, gets 2 minutes of uninterrupted alone speaking time. And I spoke on the I'm not going to bring it up because it upsets Mofo, but I spoke on the importance of updating the site during, right after the TC.
I'll probably speak
Yeah.
on assholes stealing Wayne Jones for me in free agency. So,
Probably.
That's good,
And
right.
you still hate Gary Hamilton. You can bring that up too.
all right. So Mofo, do you want to get this thing rolling?
Yes, I gave you both a little ahead of time to look this up because it's a little bit of a difficult question. But all right, question number one:
Number one.
Who is the best rookie to come into EBL in the last 5 years, from 2024 to 2028? Not counting this year's class yet,
Okay.
Okay, and
or whatever. Yeah,
I won the pregame rolling 100-sided dice.
Because
yes, Hajj goes first.
the aim dice just hate me. So.
Yes, the dice gods were not on your side. I'm gonna take the easy way out and pick Eric Bauer.
Ooh, what a surprise.
Yes. First of all, he's a top 5 scorer and has already been so for the last 3 or 4 years of his career. He has a title to his name, which he won last season on obviously he was also on a very good team, but he was clearly the best player on his own team. In addition to his obvious skills in scoring, he's efficient. He shot close to 50% from the field for the most part. He's averaged between 7 and 8 rebounds a game. He also gets an underrated amount of assists. He's been getting about 5 assists a year the last 2 years. He's getting better as a defender every year. He's still only 24. He's still on a great team. He's so good. He's making Tyler knock things over.
Mad.
He's just an incredibly well-rounded, efficient player, and he's won a title, and he'll win many more titles. He's just the best player at a very important position on the wings in EBL.
Tyler, how do you respond to that?
Poorly, since that's pretty much the obvious answer.
You can make a case here. I want to hear your case.
I know who
will-
my backup plan would have been.
Yeah, I narrowed it down between two, and I had a hard time picking between these two because there's a case to be made. I think there's a case to be made for about 3 or 4 guys on this list, but I think the only way I have a chance here is if I argue for Joe Pickens out of Philadelphia. Because listen, this guy is phenomenal. He had a great rookie year last year, and I know he's down this year, and the whole team is down this year though. So I don't know if it's him or if it's just a team thing, or if it's the way Ron's setting his depth chart. I'm not sure. I blame Harry Hazen for all of that because, man, he's awful. But Joe Pickens last year, I mean, he averaged 24 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists per game. His shooting percentages were off the charts, both field goal, free throw shooting, and his 3-point shooting wasn't bad either. He took, he had a good TC this year. He's only 20. He still has his A potential. He's 6'8", 227, so he's a great size. I know he took a little bit of a dip this year. He's only shooting 43% from the field, and that probably hurts my argument a little bit, but his rebounds are up, almost a full rebound per game. His assists are up, 1.4 assists per game, and his turnovers have only gone up 0.3 with that added assist bonus. So it seems like he's becoming, even though his scoring dropped this year, I assume Lopez's drop probably hurt him a little bit because he's having to do more, which is why the assists per game are up. And I think that this guy's just going to be the best player in this league for years to come. I mean, I know Eric Bauer is the obvious one, and he's definitely probably the best one now besides Pierre Lewis, but there's no reason for me to think that in 3, 4, maybe even 2 seasons that Joe Pickens won't be better than Bauer. He has the A- defense. He can defend well. And he just has the all-around game. This guy could have full A-minuses across the board here very soon. So he looks like another Scott Duncan who's actually good at playing the wing position, which he was designed for. So I have to go with Joe Pickens.
That was a very good argument, Tyler. I like that you brought up the rebounds and the assists going up this year drastically, which I was waiting for. His shooting is very concerning, but what it comes down to is you look at Eric Bauer's first 2 years and you compare them to Joe Pickens' first 2 years, and it's really not even close. Joe Pickens was a way better player for his first 2 years in the league compared to Bauer.
Right.
Bauer is a better player right now, yes, but he's also way more experienced, and he's probably the best player in the league right now, but as far as the best rookies coming into the league right now, I think Pickens has one of the best starts of his career ever. So I'm gonna actually give this one to Tyler for doing a great job defending Pickens on that.
I got to go with my boy.
Hajj took the easy way out, and he did it. He brought up the basic stuff with Bauer. He didn't wow me with his argument, is what I'm saying.
Well, then I should have just took Alan Whitehurst, like my backup plan was.
Yeah, he was my backup plan too to Pickens, but I figured I could make a better case for Pickens than I could Whitehurst.
You did a very good job for Pickens.
My case with Whitehurst was he's a point guard. So yeah.
I mean, it's a good way to go. So
yeah, that was going to be my argument. All right, so 1-0 for Tyler.
Yes. Now here is a shout out to the biggest friendship in EBL right now, the Dub MSC friendship.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right, Tyler goes first here. Which team is more likely to make the finals this year, Dallas or Orlando? Go, Tyler.
I mean, Dallas is the easy answer because they won the title last year, but I'm going to go with Orlando simply because I think there's way more competition in the West that could take out the Mavericks than in the East, which could take out the Magic. I mean, the Pistons look good and the Raptors look good, but Orlando is just destroying teams. I mean, they're just demolishing them right now. And Pierre Lewis, anytime you can say Pierre Lewis is having a career year, that's a very scary argument to make because he has just been incredible his entire tenure in EBL. He's averaging nearly 30 points a game, nearly 9 rebounds a game, 3 steals per game, 4 assists per game. His shooting percentages are off the charts, and you have someone like Dale Smith passing to him, who is averaging 20 and 9 and only has 1.7 turnovers per game. And then you have Allen West, who is probably one of the best small forwards in the East right now. I'm not saying the best, but one of the best, averaging 21-7. This whole team just looks complete from top to bottom, including this weird resurgence from Charles Bond that just came out of nowhere. I mean, he was an all-star this year. He's averaging 15, 12, 2 blocks a game on good shooting percentages. And then you have Jose Regan, who's pretty much just there to rebound and block. Even though he probably shouldn't be starting, he works on this team. He's kind of like a glue piece, like Sanders was for the Mavericks last year. I just think this team is complete from top to bottom. They just added Max Wynn as maybe like a third string bench piece, which is some insurance in case Stephon Bergman goes down, who is also having an incredible year at the 6-man spot. I don't see a more complete team in the East than I do the Magic. I'm not saying they'll win the title, but I could definitely see a Magic Mavericks finals, but I think the Magic are more likely to get there than the Mavs are.
All right, Hajj, what do you have to say to that?
Okay. Dallas is obviously they're leading their division, which is huge. And while they're not playing great at home, their record actually means that they're playing very good on the road, which is important in playoff games. Last year, obviously, they made the finals. They have a lot of experience, especially together. And I know there's no official chemistry rating in EBL, but it's clear that this group of players obviously has proven they can all work together and their skills just coincide perfectly. Clay is a great point guard to have. He doesn't turn it over. He seems to have no problem creating shots for other players. That's why guys like Eric Bauer and Freeman can score so readily. I know the West is a lot deeper than the East, but Houston's never really shown me that they can make a deep playoff run with their team as it is now. Oklahoma City looks better now than they used to be, but none of the top teams right now in the West like the Houstons and Oklahoma City and Portland. So far, not one of them I can even remember making it to the conference finals in the last couple of years. While Dallas has been much more consistent. I find their defense is strong, and their big man depth, I feel, is a lot better than a team like Orlando, where I feel like if they were matched up with a team with a very good offensive power forward, for example, he could really cause a lot of problems for Bond, and even with Regan and Wire there, it'd be very difficult to deal with that because their front court isn't as good as having a guy like Freeman, who's criminally underrated, and McDowell, who obviously is there to provide a lot of defense, and even Greg Gray is very good. So I feel Dallas is more well-rounded than Orlando in that they have an inside threat, and I feel that while the West looks better, nobody else has really proven they can take that step as much as Dallas did last year, where they just dominated in the playoffs. And the team they played last year is destroyed, which is San Antonio, which was their best matchup. So, yeah.
All right, Hajj, you brought up a bold argument there, bringing up that none of those teams have made the conference finals before, but I mean that's in the past. I mean, Oklahoma City is a completely different team. Portland's got experience. I mean, they were great last year, even though they're failing in the playoffs. Houston's a different team now. I mean, I agree with you that the West is not great at the top, but the East is horrible. I mean, come on. Orlando has a much easier path than Dallas of going to the finals, and and Tyler did a good job describing that, so I'm going to give this one to Tyler as well.
2-0. I think.
Ooh, that was an easy one.
Well,
obviously Orlando is easy to pick. They're in the East.
I don't know.
Really?
I think Dallas is a pretty. You could make an argument for Dallas. I just don't think you did it. The best argument is what I'm saying.
I think I got off to like a 2-0 start last time too, though, didn't I? And then
no, I think it was 3-1 Hajj, and then you came back a little bit, and then you won it.
Well, we'll have some high drama.
Anyway, now moving on to the JB question that he gave me, which I liked a lot.
Shout out to JB.
Shout out. Thank you, JB.
Shut up to JB. I mean, a shout out. Sorry.
Hajj goes first here. It's actually a topic that's been debated pretty often in the chat. Which of the Ross twins is better throughout EBL so far? Tony of the Clippers or Bill of the Jazz? Hajj, go first.
Okay, 1 second. I gotta look at their.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
Bill or Tony Ross?
I actively.
It's a good question, right?
Yeah,
I
actively participate in this debate all the time, so I'm stoked on this one.
Okay. All right. Okay. After a quick glimpse, as it were, at both brothers, I'm gonna go with Bill Ross. Now I know an argument for Tony Ross. Actually, well, no, I'll start with Bill Ross first. Bill Ross, I feel, is a bit better rounded than Tony Ross. I mean, they both are very good scorers. They both rebound well. They both shoot well, although Tony's a bit better at threes. But I think the real big difference is Bill Ross is much better on defense than Tony Ross, which is obviously a huge factor in this league. You can't really win without defense unless you're surrounded by the right players. But I feel like with Tony Ross, you need to surround him by very good defenders. Whereas with Bill Ross, you don't really need to surround him with good players because he's already good on defense. I know that the handling looks better for Tony Ross because he's got a B+ there, but he's not really averaging many more assists per game than Bill Ross, and he has far fewer, he's one less turnover per game, which is a big factor. I don't really feel like either of them have had tons of success. I mean, I guess Ross had some success with the Clippers early on, but he was more of a secondary part of it. And now that both men are entering their primes, neither of them are really leading their team to great things. But I feel going forward that Bill Ross has more upside because of his base on defense, and I think he can score just as good as Tony Ross. And the edge, it comes down to defense for me, gives the edge to me to Bill Ross.
All right,
Tyler.
It's hold on 1 second. I had to mute my microphone to get a cough out of the way there. It's easy on paper to just look at their attributes and look at their stats and say, oh, Bill Ross is definitely the better one there. I mean, he's a better rebounder, he's a better defender, gets more steals, yada, yada, yada. I understand. I understand the argument for Bill Ross. However, look at Bill Ross and the team he's on now. He's got Jason Handy with him. He's got Felix Mealy, Bill Luck, and they're, 19 and 22 with a bad points per game to a points per game allowed ratio. And now look at Tony Ross. Tony Ross has almost nothing around him. I mean, he's gone through Dwayne Todd and Bernard Kelly at point guard. He has Steve Bell at shooting guard, who is not playing well at all. Max Conyers and Nate Stout. And granted, Nate Stout has taken a big leap this year with his scoring, but his rebounding and blocks still aren't where they need to be for a good power forward in this league. And they're 20 and 19. They have a great points per game to points per game allowed ratio. They're 8th seed in the West and gone 6 and 4 in their last 10. Tony Ross has been the player on this team for the last 2 years, and they're in playoff contention this year and made the playoffs last year, and they had even less around them last year than they do now. I mean, Tony Ross has proven that he can be the guy on a team, and he can take you far. I don't care about what his defense looks like. I don't care about any other stat that you could bring up just looking at his attributes or statistics. I care about the fact that he is a winner, that you can put him on a team, make him the guy, and he will lead your team to at least an above 500 record with no one else around him. And he can carry a team. I think, the Clippers 2 years ago made a small run with Tony Ross. And
they made the finals. They
yeah,
were 2 games away from winning the finals.
Did they have Larry Austin then, or was it just Tony Ross?
I think
They
they
had
had
a lot of guys then.
Well, they didn't have a lot of guys.
They had Leto and Austin and
Sun Ma,
Yannick.
Yannick when he was good still.
Yes.
Well, okay, but all right, look at Sun Ma. What team is Sun Ma on now? The Hornets.
The Hornets.
And they're 20 and 20 with Ma, Marino, Lamberson, Vega. And you look at Ricardo Leto, and he's just been in decline mode ever since. I mean, he didn't even work out for the Wizards this year. Tony Ross and Larry Austin were the only two guys on that team, and they really made the finals. I know that statistically there were a lot of other impactful players on that team, but Tony Ross was one of the main features, and he was the main feature last year when they made the playoffs, and he's the main feature this year when they're almost to the playoffs, and they have at least a good points per game to points per game allowed ratio, and they look like they're on the up and up. So if I had to pick one to build a team around, I'd take Tony Ross, although I don't think either are bad. Both should be fixtures in the league for years to come. So,
but I knew that whoever picked Bill Ross was going to go with the defense, and that was a problem for me because your defense is only as good as your best player, and Bill Ross and Tony Ross are the best players in their team, and look at the defense on each team. The Clippers are a better defensive team than the Jazz, so. And the fact you guys didn't even bring up the fact that Tony Ross is a much better shooter than Bill Ross. It's not even close in that category. And Bill Ross is a very good player, but I feel like he's never had success in the playoffs or anything like that before. I don't even know if he's made the playoffs before. He's maybe once, but Tony Ross Tony Ross has not only made the finals as a significant player, he's also made 2 other playoffs besides that. And I believe that Tyler is going to get this one as well.
3-0. I gotta take my revenge out on Hud's big.
I just don't buy the defense argument for Bill Ross when his team's defense is much worse.
I mean,
they're both the best player.
The reason I didn't bring up the scoring is because Bill Ross is almost as good as Tony Ross. Tony Ross nails threes a lot more than Bill Ross does, but in the field goal percentage and free throw percentage category, they're pretty close. So. And
Tyler, you also made a good point about the teammates. Tony Ross has nobody around him, and Bill Ross is much better players than and they have a worse record.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that Bill Ross doesn't have a point guard, but neither does Tony Ross. So,
yes. All right. So Hajj is in a pull a little bit here, 3-0 Tyler. And
I came prepared.
All right, you want to get revenge. All right, so Tyler goes first here. This is stick with me on this question because it's a little long. I don't know how to shorten it. Which is ultimately more successful in your opinion? A point guard who produces all around but turns it over a lot like Scott Duncan, or a point guard who doesn't produce quite as much but is a way more efficient handler like Josh Grundy? Which would you rather have?
See, this one's tough because I don't have a preference really.
But which do you think is more?
Well, yeah.
Going to be more successful?
Which player or which scheme.
Which strategy of a point guard? Like a guy who produces a
Like
lot with a lot
if
of
you
turnovers?
had the same other like team around them, but you were just inserting a point guard into the scenario,
Yes.
pretty
Rather
much,
have
right?
Grundy's low turnovers or Duncan's more all-around production.
All right, I would go with a player like Duncan, because I just think that if you have a player who can get you an insane amount of points per game, an insane amount of rebounds per game from the point guard position, and a good amount of assists per game with some steals, and the only downside is some turnovers, you have to go with that because the dynamic of matching up an opposing point guard to that is just insane. And you can look at Scott Duncan as a reference. They've made the finals 2 years in a row. And Scott Duncan's been the best player on that team both times. And last year they got beat by the Mavericks, but they had Eric Bauer. I don't even count that because Bauer is just a monster. But the Pistons beat the Clippers in 2027 after making a great run in the East, and they made the finals last year. The thing with a player like Duncan is no point guard, unless you have a point guard, another one who's like him, is going to be able to match up with him. I mean, you're just going to get obliterated each time. And I think even Clay had some trouble stopping Duncan in the playoffs last year, even though Bauer just destroyed. It just creates such a matchup problem, and I know everyone has such a big deal about assist to turnover ratio, which I agree to the most part. I think if you have a point guard who's like a 15-10 guy, then yeah, assists or turnovers matter. But if you have a guy who's averaging like 24 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 9 assists per game, you can afford to let him have 3 turnovers per game because he's creating way more scores than he's giving up with those 3 turnovers per game. I mean, his rebounds create scores, his assists create scores, and then his scoring creates scores, obviously. But the turnovers, they can change the way the game flows, but the thing is that if the game's already flowing in a way for your favor that your point guard is creating because of his abstract play, the turnovers become less of a problem because he's doing so much more for you that I would rather have a player who's averaging all those ridiculous numbers and creating things rather than a point guard who's just making sure mistakes don't happen. So,
All right, Hajj, what do you have to say?
All right. I think the argument for a very good passer like Josh Grundy is obvious. You can put lesser talent around a player like Josh Grundy, and he'll be able to get as much scoring, certainly on offense, as you can out of them. I mean, it's hard to say how somebody like Mike Reynolds would do since he's only played with Grundy his whole career, but I mean, you have to believe that one of the reasons that he shoots so efficiently and he can score so much is because Grundy is better at making shots for him. And while Grundy can obviously score and he shoots very well when he does shoot, his ability to make his offense more efficient is really important because I think efficiency is very, very important. And the problem with turnovers is you're just not efficient, is you give up points. And if you have 4 or 4.5 turnovers a game, that could be an 8 to 9 point swing. And then if you take those 9 points away from your scoring, all of a sudden your guy is a 28-9 guy, which is still obviously very good, but that's not better than a guy like Grundy who could get 26-10, but he's not really giving up any points on turnovers, maybe 4 points a game. And also, I feel that, like, if you have a top level passer, it's easier to build the whole team around him. You don't need special kind of defenders around him with Duncan, a guy like Duncan that, well, I don't know if we're counting as a guy that has bad defense too and turns it over a lot. Is that part of the equation?
No, just the offense.
Okay, so we'll assume it's somebody that's, yeah, okay. So, see, with Duncan, it's his passing it's obviously it's not bad, but it's just the turnovers just ruin a lot of what you can do on offense because those are points that you're taking away from yourself. So if you take those points away, let's say the guy is only scoring 24 or 25 points a game, and you're turning it over 4 times a game, minimum that's 8 points away. like I said before, and that could be, all of a sudden you're only getting about 17 points a game, let's say, depending on how many points. Obviously, a guy like Scott Duncan, where he's scoring almost 30 points a game, is pretty rare that you have somebody at that level. But guys at the level of, not obviously Josh Grundy's the best at what he's doing, but even guys a little bit less than that, it's easier to find guys like that and build around guys like that than to find a Scott Duncan where it's a 1 in a million chance that you're going to find somebody that can score 30 points a game and grab 8 rebounds from the point guard position. So I think the argument for a guy like Josh Grundy is it's easier to find those kinds of players, and the turnovers just they take away less points. Whereas if you have a lot of turnovers, you're actually losing a lot more points than people might not realize as much as is actually happening.
Can I make one more point and then Hajj can counter this point, or if he wants?
Go ahead.
Okay. The argument that a player like Grundy is easier to find, so you should build around it, almost just makes my argument, because if you have a player like Duncan, if you have someone like that who is 1 in a million, why would you not hold on to him so that you could find someone like Grundy who is a lot easier to come around?
But there's no other player like Duncan. The only one even close to him is Gary Hamilton that can produce those kind of numbers.
Yoder, Ray Bonds, I mean, there are a few.
They're not even close to Duncan, though.
No, they're not even close, but
you have anything else to add?
I was just going to add that if you look at Grundy...
Yoder doesn't turn it over that much anymore either. So.
Well, but he did, and he was still making, the MVP runs at that point. But my only other point was you have Grundy, who's averaging, 10 assists per game and 2 turnovers per game, and they're averaging 109.6 points per game. And then look at the players he has around him. He has Mike Reynolds, he has Dobrogas Walczak, and he has Steve Harris, who are all bona fide scorers in this league. And then you look at Scott Duncan, and they're also, the Pistons are also averaging the exact same amount of points per game, which is 109.6. And the players he has around him is Joe Trammell, Anthony Davis, and Elin Trigg-Vaesen. And Elin's taken a big jump this year, and Joe Trammell's a 19 points per game scorer. But how much of Joe Trammell's scoring is because of Scott Duncan? It's just they're averaging almost the exact same, and I would say Toronto has better offensive weapons around them than Scott Duncan does. So if you're building an offensive team like that, I'd have to pick a player like Duncan.
Yeah, but Scott Duncan might not score as much on Toronto because he wouldn't have to take as many shots because he'd have better scorers around him. And then his turnovers would be exploited even more because he'd still have the same amount of turnovers, maybe a couple more assists, but he'd be scoring less because Mike Reynolds shoots a lot more than a guy like Joe Trammell or Elin Trigg-Vaesen.
You don't think Scott Duncan would have...
the Vikings.
You don't think Scott Duncan would have like 10.5 assists per game on that Toronto team with less turnovers since he'd be passing more to players like Harris, Dobrogas?
I think he'd still be averaging over 3 turnovers a game. He might get to 10 assists a game, but his scoring would probably drop a lot with a guy like Mike Reynolds.
I think his scoring would be fine. But
all right, so that was a good debate. Hajj is getting this one, and I'll tell you why. Because all you have to do is look at the history of EBL, the title winners. There has been maybe one good point guard like Duncan who has won a title like that. But you could Chris Paul, Kyrie Irving, Lorenzo Clay, Nenad, all these players were just like Josh Grundy. They had high assists and low turnovers. Duncan is one of a kind. Him winning a title is more an exception with that style than the norm. Hajj's Grundy argument was very good. How he broke down the points per game, how much turnovers cost you. I believe turnovers is overrated, but I think that the Grundy style of point guard is more successful in the short and long term than the Duncan style of point guard.
In the past, and I'm not going to try and argue for the point. I understand Hajj got it, but my point is that if we really are claiming Duncan is a one of a kind player, and you used him as the argument, the only
but we weren't comparing players though. We were comparing the style of point guard play. Is what I was saying.
That'd be a whole other argument to compare to Duncan. It's not really the same.
Well, then you should have used someone like Yoder or someone like that then, because Duncan, I mean, I don't know, he's just like a one-of-a-kind player.
Yeah, like Ray Bonds, like Ray Bonds would have been a bit easier for Tyler to.
But I mean, ultimately, it was Duncan's style versus Grundy's style, and Grundy's style is shown to be more successful over EBL in the history of EBL than Duncan's style of point guard play.
Okay.
Because, I mean, look at like John Wall. John Wall was a lot like Scott Duncan was in the past, and John Wall was hated because of it.
Right, but John Wall couldn't score 30 points a game and then still get 10 assists per game. And
he was at 25-10 for a long time, which is pretty close to Duncan. Plus you mentioned Joe Trammell's scoring going up with Duncan as a point guard. That is not true because Trammell averaged 18 points a game with his best shooting when Duncan was not.
Or Brandon Knight was also kind of like Scott Duncan, although not as many turnovers and a little bit less scoring.
All right, but ultimately Hajj gets that one. It was a good argument both ways, so it was a good debate. But yeah, I'm giving that one to Hajj because it's more successful in the history of EBL. Anyway, question number 5. This is Hajj, right? Now this is
mine.
No,
this is Hajj. This is kind of like a loaded question here, but has Kenneth Marshall become the best EBL big man in history, not named Derek Favors at this point? Hajj, you're up.
Yes, I'll say yes. And the argument is that obviously Derek Favors, as you said, is certainly right now, and unless Kenneth Marshall plays a lot more years, probably will be the best ever. But if you look at let's say the guys below Derek Favors, and you got a guy, let's say like Anthony Davis, you could argue might have been the second best power forward. And I think defensively he can certainly compete with the numbers Marshall has done. He can't rebound as good, but he was a better overall defender. But the fact is, Marshall, while always being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, was never, ever a liability on offense, even before the last 2 years when he's shown that he can score a lot if you make him an option. Just his rebounding, 12.7 rebounds a game is got to be near the top all-time on average rebounds per game in EBL. If you add in his blocking, he's always been a great shutdown big man, Defensive Player of the Year multiple times, as you said. I don't really care about all-stars or all leagues, but the fact is, he's a great defender. His offense, if you look over his career, he's averaged 16 points a game. And it doesn't seem like it because he had a long stretch on an outside offense in Minnesota where he had no chance at all to score, and he still got 13 to 16 points, actually 14 to 16 points over those years. Earlier in his career, he scored a bit more. Now he's scored more, which makes him like a more well-rounded player. But even almost just based off his defensive play alone, I would rate him equal to a guy like Anthony Davis or Dwight Howard on defense, and he's definitely better than them on offense. Just his free throw shooting makes him better than Dwight Howard instantly, and really it's hard to think of anyone else that's really close to him other than Anthony Davis would be the next closest guy, and he was never nearly as good on offense as Kenneth Marshall is.
All right, Tyler.
This one's tricky for me. But I think it's got to be Anthony Davis. I mean, look, Kenneth Marshall's good. We all know this. No one's trying to say that Kenneth Marshall isn't good. But I just find Anthony Davis to be a lot better. Every accolade you just said about Anthony Davis's defensively can also be applied, or Kenneth Marshall defensively can also be applied to Anthony Davis. He's also never been a liability on offense, really. These past, 4 or 5 years, yeah, maybe, but even then, he's not taking a lot of shots, so it's not really hurting you, and he's still getting about 10 points per game, which, for someone who is as shut down of a defender as Anthony Davis is, I think I would take 10 points per game. I mean, look, no one's debating that Kenneth Marshall's a good defensive player, but I think Anthony Davis has been the best defensive player EBL has ever seen. I mean, he's just such a shutdown guy. Even blocks aside, he gets a lot of steals too. And the thing that Anthony Davis does that Kenneth Marshall doesn't do is he creates a lot of shots. I mean, throughout his career, he's averaged 3 assists per game. Some years he's averaged almost 4. He's always had good handling. He's been someone that you could rely on getting a rebound and then being able to quickly get it out, pass it back to an outside wing. And I just think the creating shots aspect has been a little bit underrated. I know it's definitely overrated in some power forwards and centers, but for a guy like Anthony Davis, who's already elite and already a great defender and a great rebounder, I think that's just an added component to his game. And his rebounds are down this year, but he's playing a small forward. He's played a small forward pretty much the whole year, I think, so I don't really count this year as an example for anything. But I mean, and you can make the argument for Anthony Davis to say he's been on good teams and never won a title, but Kenneth Marshall hasn't won a title either. So it's just one of those things. It's just a matter of preference, and I like Anthony Davis more. I think he's been a better defender, even though they're pretty much the best two defenders along there with Derek Favors EBL's ever seen in the big man category. I just think Anthony Davis has been a little bit better. And I think his handling just gives him that added boost. He's a guy that you can really just make as a defensive center point of your team and never have to worry about it ever again. So he just makes the thing with Anthony Davis is that he makes every player around him defensively better. I mean, with Kenneth Marshall, even though he was great on those Minnesota teams, and you could say that there wasn't much else defensively around him, that team defense was terrible, even with Marshall there. And I can't think of anywhere where Anthony Davis has ever been, maybe with the exception of the past season or two, where it hasn't been like a top 5 defense in this league. I think he just makes the whole defense better when he's around, and that's something I can't say about Marshall.
All right, that's a very good point there, Tyler, about making the teammates better, because Marshall, the T-Wolves never made the playoffs without Marshall, and then they traded for him. They immediately become like a 55-win team. So he still makes the team better all around. But
well, right.
Ultimately, you said Davis is the best defender, and like you said something like he's the most dominant defender or something like that. But right now, Kenneth Marshall is all-time leader in rebounds per game and blocks per game, which shows that is just not the case with Davis. He's a full rebound lower than Marshall per game.
Well, rebounding, yeah, I don't really count rebounding though. I mean,
what?
Rebounding is a defensive stat.
There is such a thing as offensive rebounding though.
Yes, regardless, he's better at rebound, all facets of rebounding. And Marshall is he's only 30 years old and he's still in his prime, and Davis had many good years. As you mentioned, his passing was very underrated, which I agree with. But ultimately, he was way too flawed on offense. He was a decent offensive player. He was not a liability for a lot of years, but often he was a liability when he, like especially the latter half of his career. Marshall's become a dominant all-around player now, and I just feel like he's just, his consistency and dominance is just unparalleled next to Favors, and I'm going to give this one to Hajj.
Well, let me just say that when I said that defensively, I mean, you look at like box scores and his blocks. Their blocks are very close to each other.
Yes.
Blocks per game wise.
I mean, Davis is the best shot blocker of all time right now, or at least for now, but because he's got more years. But Marshall's gonna pass him in a few years. It's not even gonna be close, I don't think.
But the thing that Davis does that Marshall doesn't really do is the steals per game. I mean, there's been numerous seasons where he's averaged one or more, whereas Marshall's normally around the 0.7, 0.8 mark. So.
Yeah, but that's nitpicking. I mean, really, one steal a game from a big man, it's not a huge deal, in my opinion.
It's not a huge deal because you never really see it. So I don't know. That's just my thing.
All right.
For me, it was the rebounding that makes a bigger difference than anything.
Yeah, I agree with Hajj. The rebound, he's just so dominant as a rebounder. The best EBL's probably ever seen. And all right, now question number 6. This is an interesting one I thought of. And Tyler goes first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this will take a little bit of thinking. If you could take one player in the league and add them to an existing team, who would it be and why?
Like to make
For this season, yes. If you could take one player, any player in the league, and you add them to one team to make them better for this season, who would it be and why?
Okay, now this is like from an unbiased perspective, right? Because otherwise I'm adding Eric Bauer to the Kings, so...
Yes, unbiased. Unbiased. Yeah.
Unbiased.
Okay,
Like, what player fits best on the other team? Like, if you could put one player ideally on another team, and then that team would take off and become the title favorite, who would it be?
Okay, because that's different, because I was going to put somebody on Boston just out of mercy.
No.
Okay, so you mean what can push a team over the top by moving?
Yeah, one player fits so well with this team that you would put them there and immediately they would take off and become the best team in the league.
Eric Bauer is okay at small forward, right? Or has that never been really tested?
I don't think he's played there long. He's played there some.
He'd probably do good though there, right? I mean, we can say that.
But if you had like Eric Bauer to Oklahoma City, they would just have too much scoring like they had before.
Right.
This one.
Right. The way I was gonna go is I'm gonna say I would add Joe Trammell to the Dallas Mavericks and move Eric Bauer to small forward because with Dustin Sanders, he's a pretty good glue piece. You know, he's averaging 12-8. I mean, nothing special, but he holds it together. But I just can't imagine the way this defense would look with Joe Trammell on this team. I mean, you would have Lorenzo Clay, Joe Trammell, Eric Bauer, Larry McDowell, and Brian Freeman as your defense. And I think Trammell's points per game would probably go down a little bit. He wouldn't be as big of a focus on this team, which is fine because that's not what you need him to do. I just can't, and I don't really know how to make this argument because it just seems like something that's kind of like it's a questionable, maybe like a prediction kind of thing. But Joe Trammell has been on two finals teams in a row, and one of them won the title. And their defense each year has been tremendous when he has been the best defensive player on that team. I mean, Scott Duncan's obviously the best player on that team, and I would say Elan's probably definitely better this year, but I don't think anyone's making any case that Joe Trammell isn't the best defensive player on that team. He's averaging 7 rebounds per game. He's averaging 2.4 steals per game, and his shooting percentages are pretty decent. I just think if you add Joe Trammell to that team, and you have that lineup of Freeman, McDowell, Bauer, Trammell, Clay, that I couldn't see any other team stopping them because then you would have the high assist, low turnover aspect from Clay. You would have the all around scoring and just tremendous effort, best player in the league, Eric Bauer, and then you would have the best defensive wing player in the league, Joe Trammell, along with probably a top 3 center in the league, Brian Freeman, and I just think that chemistry of them together, there wouldn't be too much scoring. There would be just enough. Their rebounding from top to bottom would be stellar, and their defense would improve from the already great 102.7 points per game allowed that it already is. I just can't imagine anyone beating them with that.
All right, Hajj, who would you add to one team to make them better?
All right. I would take the actually previously mentioned Kenneth Marshall, and I would probably slide him onto Toronto. I mean, we all know that Toronto has a fantastic backcourt with Grundy and Reynolds. Dabagross Walzak has played very well, but and I feel like I'm sure we mentioned this in the season preview. If Toronto had any sort of help in the post, then they'd be one of the best teams in the league. Mark Skull, if his role was to just be the second guy behind a guy like Marshall, he'd be great at that job. He doesn't take too many shots. He gets a good amount of rebounds. He's a good defender. He blocks well. But if you add Marshall, it does a lot of things. I mean, it would help the rebounding immensely for this team. It would add, obviously, it'd be a huge, massive upgrade over Anthony Smith or Mark Skull or any of the centers they have. But also an underrated part would be obviously his scoring would drop a bit, but it would add a fourth scorer that's a starter to their offense, and the inside presence would keep defenses more honest to their outside shooting, so they could work more efficiently with guys like Dabagrast and Reynolds and Grundy and Harris. It'd open up shots for them. And you know that if Marshall's got to grab more rebounds from all those outside shots, like he's not going to miss putting them back. I feel like he's probably the best big man in the league, and Toronto is a team that if you add the best big man in the league to that team, they could be just as good as Orlando is and Detroit are probably in the East. Maybe not as good, and it would just help the whole team defense to have a center like that. So I think adding a guy like Marshall to Toronto would make them significantly better and a much more legitimate threat, especially in the playoffs.
All right, let me say that I love both of those fits. I think they were both great ideas, so well done both of you there. But ultimately, I think that Hajj had the better idea here because Dallas is already like a title contender, even with Dustin Sanders starting. I mean, Trammell would be a great fit there, and they'd be unstoppable on defense, but Toronto is flawed, and if you had Kenneth Marshall for that team, they are dominant, and they would take off. It's basically exactly what I said in the question, what Hajj proposed there. So I'm giving this one to Hajj. We're all tied up 3-3.
Okay. Yay. I was also thinking of putting him in Orlando, but that just seemed kind of overkill.
Yeah, that's the same thing as Dallas. basically.
Yeah.
All right, so Hajj goes first here. All right, this is look in your crystal ball a little bit here. What
Okay,
player ends
wait,
up?
let me get it out first. Okay, I got it.
Which player ends their career with more titles, Pierre Lewis or Gary Hamilton? Right now, they each have two. Right? No, is that right? They have two.
I don't think so.
Uh, I know Hamilton has two.
Yeah, they each
Lewis,
have. Yeah, they each have
Oh
two.
wow,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Which player
Pierre.
ends their career with more titles, Gary Hamilton or Pierre Lewis?
Okay. Uh, jeez, that's tough. Um, I'm gonna take the safer bet, and I'm gonna say Gary Hamilton has more titles. For one, he's younger, so that gives him 3 more years of playing time than Pierre Lewis has, and that's a factor that's you can't really come back from that. Two, while MSC has done a fantastic job of rebuilding Orlando, he's also had times where his teams have been from bad to awful, and he's shown in the past he's more than willing to blow his teams up. And assuming neither of these guys move again, Thug can quickly and always build very strong teams. He's won a title before. He's always in the playoffs. He's always gonna find a way to surround his star players with more star players and more talent. And that's obviously that would make it a lot easier for Gary Hamilton to win more titles than Pierre Lewis. Another factor is Omar Thomas on Houston is only 26. He's one of the best centers in the league, so he's going to have a lot of years left to play with Hamilton. Whereas on Orlando, they have Dale Smith. He's pretty good. They have Allen West, who's very solid, but he seems to have sort of leveled off. Whereas I feel like Omar Thomas still has a bit of room to grow. I know he's 26, but I find that guys can still grow a little bit. But ultimately, assuming that these guys stay on their same teams, I feel that Thug's probably better at a GM than MSC, basically. And also, point guards, as great as Pierre Lewis is, point guards can take over in a playoff series and win. And I mean, he's already won twice. Gary Hamilton with probably less or similarly talented teams on San Antonio, whereas Pierre Lewis hasn't won a title in a long time. And basically, that's why I'm going to pick Gary Hamilton.
Oh, Tyler, you get to do something you love to do, argue against Gary Hamilton. Go ahead.
It's a dream come true, really. I want to thank all the people who got me here. No, okay. Listen, I think Hajj spent way too much time talking about the GMs that the team are on and the players around them, blah, 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 blah. If they both got traded tomorrow, his whole argument's out the window. So I'm just going to look at the two players here. And I know Pierre hasn't won in quite a little while, but neither has Gary Hamilton. It's been like 4 or 5 years since Gary Hamilton's won. I know it's probably a little bit shorter than Pierre Lewis, but it's easy to make the argument that Hamilton will win more. He's younger, he's won 2 already. He won 2 in less time, blah, 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 blah. But the thing with this is that Pierre Lewis, he has the ability to change an entire series. Really, there's no one who can match up to him. With Gary Hamilton, I know he's an offensive nightmare and whatever, but his assists aren't that great. He can't create scores as well as it goes back to the Scott Duncan, Josh Grundy argument. That he can't create as well as Scott Duncan can. I mean, he's averaging 8 assists per game this year. He averaged 9 last year. His turnovers are still around 3 per game, which isn't that good. And I didn't like that Hajj said that with Gary Hamilton, he's a point guard, so he can take over the series more, and they're more likely to win, because that's just insulting to Pierre Lewis, who has numerous times taken over a playoff series and been the main reason that his team has won the series like that. And I mean, if you were to look at this year, I think that Pierre Lewis definitely has a better shot of winning than Gary Hamilton does, but for the future like this, it matters where they end up. Do they stay on their teams or do they go elsewhere? And I think if Hamilton goes to a different team, he has to be surrounded with other players who can kind of distribute since his assists are down, and whereas Pierre, it doesn't really matter where he goes. I mean, look at his team this year. He's still averaging a good amount of assists, even though Dale Smith is there. He's one of those guys who can pick up the slack of no matter who's around him. He makes the team defensively better. If a point guard is slacking, not saying Dale Smith is not good, but because he's probably one of the best point guards Pierre's played with in a long time. But if a point guard slacks, Pierre can help take that over and get the assists per game that they need to stay in it. And he can rebound. He's averaging 9 rebounds per game this year, which is something that Hamilton doesn't do quite as well. Pierre Lewis can make up for the slack of big men. If they're not getting the rebounds, Pierre Lewis can. So it's one of those things where you have Pierre Lewis, who's like a 39-4 guy, who can literally just take over a game and make everyone around him better and pick up the slack for teammates who aren't doing as much. Whereas Hamilton is kind of one-dimensional. He can score, and he plays good defense, and that's about it. And if I had to pick someone who would win more titles and who I'd want on a title contending team, it would be Pierre Lewis.
All right, first of all, I do not buy the age thing being a factor at all here because there's only 3 years difference, and Pierre has a 6-year contract. He's going to play at least 6 more years. And I mean, if you guys were in a series against Pierre Lewis, you would be scared to death that you would lose. If you were in a series against Gary Hamilton, you would be worried, but you wouldn't be scared to death like you would with Pierre. And I feel like Hamilton, he's like one bad training camp away from being not an elite player anymore, but Pierre Lewis has a longer, like he can go down a little bit, he's still going to be an elite player. He's got the longevity over Hamilton, despite the age differences. And I am going to award this to Tyler because he also brought up that Hajj has spent too much time with the GM, which is completely right because these guys could be traded at any point. Even though Thug and MSC are intelligent and they won't just give them away for anything, they could be traded at any point.
Right?
Yeah, could be traded at any point. And Tyler did a good job breaking down the players better than more than the GMs. So Tyler gets this one.
Hooray!
Oh,
I needed it. I was like 0-3 for the last 3, so. I was so relieved when you picked Gary Hamilton, though, because I had no clue how I was going to argue that.
Yeah, you kind of
me neither.
All right, this is looking outside the playoffs here. This is like putting yourself in put your GM shoes on here.
Let me go get those. Next to my crystal ball. 1 second.
Mine don't fit me very well, apparently. So.
Did you try loosening the laces a little bit? I find they slip on easier that way.
All right, ignore all 16 playoff teams for this question.
Done.
If you could swap places, if you could swap rosters with one non-playoff team going forward, who would it be and why?
The Washington Wizards. Oh wait.
Unbiasedly.
With one non-playoff team going forward?
Yeah, if you could take any non-playoff team's roster right now going forward, who would you take?
And this is my question, right? No, it's me. He picked Hamilton, and then I picked.
Yeah. It's Tyler first.
Tyler goes first.
Give me 1 second. I have to look at this.
I think I might pick the Kings.
I am pretty sexy.
I like to challenge myself, so.
Oh. Nice.
I noticed that with your teams that you put together.
I saw that coming. Yet I did nothing to stop it.
Just like your players aging. All right.
What could I even do? Anyways,
I don't know.
Just go.
I just like making fun of you. I think I'd take the Utah Jazz because they're a point guard away from being a playoff team right now. I mean, they're almost there. They're pretty elite at this point. They have Bill Ross, who's a 22-8 player, just phenomenal. We've been over Bill Ross. I don't need to go into more about why he's tremendous. I think he's just a great player. They have Felix Mealy, who's on the up and up. He just seems to get better every year, it seems like. He went from 12.7.5 to 14.9.3 to now he's 15.9.6. His field goal percentage has gone up each year. He just seems to be getting better each year. They have Bill Luck, who is a 12-11 guy, great defender, can do whatever. They have George Blazer, who I think is criminally underrated, especially on this team. I think at this point, if I were Rocca, I would be starting Blazer and moving Handy to something off the bench or something. I don't know. But then you have Jason Handy also, who I haven't given up on yet, and he does a lot of great things. It's just his shooting worries me so much, but I think that even with Handy's troubles, you could still trade him for a lot, and you'd be left with Ross, Mealy, Luck, Blazer, and hopes that maybe Wheeler will one day be able to shoot a three to save his life. There's a lot of potential on this team, and there's just so much talent and they're all so young. Even Bill Luck, who seems like an established veteran at this point, whatever, is only 25. This team is very young. They've gotten better. Pretty much every individual player on this team, with maybe the exception of Handy, I don't really remember, has gotten better each year. And even if you are worried about Handy, there's someone who will trade for him. You'll be able to get a lot for him. And if you put a point guard on this team, they're a definite playoff team. And out of all the playoff teams, or out of all the non-playoff teams, I can't imagine someone with a better situation here in the next 3-4 years than the Jazz, especially since they have their own picks each of those years. So,
all right, Hajj.
I'm gonna say if I had to swap with any other team, I would probably swap with the New York Knicks. While personally I despise drafting, this team has tons and tons and tons of first-round picks, including 2 Heat picks, a Warriors pick, their own picks. Those are all lottery picks right there. And the Heat's pick could easily be lottery again next year, as can the Knicks. And even the Bucks pick I'm not going to go 2 years into the future. In addition to that obvious benefit, Philip Paulino, while not great from 3 points right now, is already proven he looks like a great scorer already at 21 years old as a rookie. This team also has a lot of good assets they can still move out. In addition to cap space, which they'll have next year, they can still move a guy like Gerald Dunn, even Mason Frederick or Anthony Bennett. You could trade these guys. I don't know if you can get a first for them, but you can get some sort of a youth for them from a team that needs a good depth guy like that. While the talent isn't as good as Utah's, they do have some other good young players, not many. But I just feel like Philip Paulino is just such a great talent, and all those firsts, they give you a lot of options. He can try and build through the cap room that he has. He could deal those firsts out for more talent, which people are always looking for. I mean, you can get a very good player by trading 3 lottery picks. You can get a star player, and you have the cap room to bring that player on no matter what size or length his contract is. He's got guys he can bring back if he wants to reload quickly. Guys that can be role players like Anthony Bennett, as I mentioned earlier, Gerald Dunn, Mason Frederick. These guys could all be role players if you want to bring them back and rebuild quickly. Or you could even build through the draft itself with your draft picks and get young pieces to put around Philip Paulino. So for me, the Knicks, it just seems like they have a lot of good things going for them in that you can build the team how you want easily. And you have a good potential star player in Paulino as the cornerstone of what you can build.
Okay, I had when I came up with this question, I had a team in mind, and that was the Knicks.
The Bulls?
No, the Knicks, because like Hajj broke it down great. I think he's underrating the players a little bit, like Eugene Doyle and Keith Koch and Paulino. Oh, he said Paulino, and Machado is just amazing for an 18-year-old. Like this roster going forward is just it's a polo roster. You can't go wrong with picking a polo roster. Basically, is what I'm saying.
That was my second argument.
I think the Jazz are a little overrated by Tyler because I do not love this team. Like Bill Luck has declined a lot with the shooting. Jason Handy is so overrated with his turnovers and
right. But tell me, you could get so much for Jason Handy in a trade. Someone
not as much you could last year in the offseason. And that Blazer does nothing but score. He's a good player, but he doesn't contribute anything else. And their point guards are such a mess, and they really have no great assets to trade. Like this roster is basically a fringe playoff team going forward without huge improvement. So I'm awarding this to Hajj.
Ba-boom! That was an explosion.
So we are all tied up at 4, which this is now a best of 3, basically. All right, so this is another crystal ball question, basically. But
Jeez, I gotta go get it again. 1 second.
uh, all right. What? Okay, now Tyreek Evans holds the points record with over 37,000. I think it is something like that. Which player in EBL right now do you think has the best chance of potentially breaking that scoring record? Evans is at 36,312. Is what he played. He played like almost 20 seasons. So who do you think has the best chance of matching or breaking that record?
Is it me first now? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. It's me first. I'm the first one to go. Okay.
I can give you a couple active leaders, maybe. Let me see.
No, I think I got an idea.
Yeah, I think there are only like 2 or 3 that are really feasible.
Yeah, I can only yeah, exactly. I can see about 1 or 2 here. All right. I'm yeah, okay. I'm gonna go with Bart Roser. I mean, the obvious answer is he's averaged 27.3 points a game over his career, and he's pretty much not even dipped, or he's dipped a little bit, but I mean, the lowest he's gotten in the last 5 years is 27.7. In addition to that, I don't know if it's not really fault of his own, but actually no. In addition to that, he's always seems like he's the top scorer on any team he's on. It's a combination of obviously he's very talented, but it seems like when you get a guy like Bart Roser, you don't go and get other guys around him that shoot a lot, because he will provide the offense for you and you can put lesser scorers. So his scoring won't really drop. He's very efficient, which doesn't really matter in scoring points ultimately, but his field goal attempts are very high. I mean, 2 years ago he shot over 2,000 shots, which is ridiculous. He shoots a ton of threes, which obviously gets you a lot more points, and he's pretty efficient from that area too. He's averaged over 41% in his career, and I think nobody really even comes close to that 27 points per game he's gotten. I mean, I'm sure he's got to be close to the top 10 already. He's only 29, and I've seen absolutely no sign that he's going to decline anytime soon. So if he can even stay close to keeping his abilities like Tyreek did over the next 5 or 6 years, he certainly seems like the top candidate to jump past him in points per game, because he just shoots so much, and he's been a fixture probably in the top 5 of points per game for pretty much since maybe his 3rd year of his career until now. He also scored 24 points his first year. He, like a lot of these guys that are top scorers now, didn't score right away, whereas Roser, like right off the bat, the lowest he's averaged was 24.5 points a game, and that there's nobody else actively in this league right now that can say that they average that many points per game as their lowest in a season that I can think of off the top of my head, at least.
For the season, Roser was 30th all time in points, so he's pretty close up there. Now, Tyler, what do you have to say?
I'm gonna go with Mike Reynolds. He's just, I know he's hasn't been as prolific of a scorer as Bart Roser throughout history, but these last 2 years for him, he averaged almost 32 last season, and he's at 26 this year. He seems to be getting better as time goes on. But Bart Roser, I like him, but he had 1 season where he averaged 30, and the rest, they were like 25, 26. The last 2 have been 30, 29, 28. Mike Reynolds, I think there's no proof for this, obviously, because I can't make an argument for things that haven't happened yet, but I just can't see Mike Reynolds going down in scoring at all. And with Mike Reynolds he's very consistent, he has A- inside, A outside. He shoots pretty good from 3. He hits pretty much all of his free throws. He always has a great field goal percentage. And he turns the ball over hardly at all. So when the ball gets in his hands, it normally stays there. His attributes have gotten better in these past few years. He started out a lot of teams didn't really know where to play him. He was playing, I think he started as a point guard, or he was drafted as like a point guard or something, and then, he played some small forward, but once he settled in his role as shooting guard and he got on this Toronto team, he had a career year last year. And his points are going up this season. I think he'll probably finish around 27, 28. And if he keeps doing that throughout his entire career and he plays for a good long time, I can't see anyone being a better scorer than him. So I have to go with Mike Reynolds on this one.
I think Hajj made probably the better argument because Bart Roser is really, he's the most active, he's the highest active points per game scorer in EBL right now with 27.3. Reynolds and Roser is just insanely consistent. There's nobody who scores better than him year in and year out.
I know.
Not even Pierre. Pierre's he drops. He's less consistent than even Roser is in points. Reynolds is a very good scorer. But the huge drop, he dropped over 5.2 points per game from last year, and with almost no like no changes from the roster other than losing Clinton, which should equal more shooting for him. But I just think Roser, he's extremely consistent, and I think that was a great choice by Hodge to pick him. So I'm going to give him the point here.
Yeah, Roser was the only answer to go with, really.
Yeah, really. I couldn't think of anyone else I would have picked.
You could have went Pickens or Bauer possibly, but
maybe. But Bauer's really not even close.
Yeah, that's a reach. I mean, they're still very young. All right, so here is Tyler's chance to force question 11. Yes. Tyler needs the next two to win here. All right, this is. Think of your own definition of superstar player here, like what you consider a superstar player and what others consider a superstar player. Who is the most overrated superstar player in EBL currently, and why are they overrated? Tyler goes first.
All right, I got one because I was gonna go with someone else, but they're having a really good year this year, and it's gonna be hard for me to make that argument. So, I'm gonna go with Adrian Cool as my superstar player, who I find to be overrated. Pretty much anytime you talk about elite shooting guards or difference makers, at least for a long time, Adrian Cool was at the top of that list. And I feel like he still would be if he weren't on the Hawks because, Dub C just kind of makes everything irrelevant. But, with Adrian Cool, he's always been looked at as someone who is a great shooting guard and he can just do so much and he's just great and this and that. But what it comes down to is he can score. He can score really, really well. I mean, he's averaged 26.6 throughout his career. That actually probably would have been a pretty good one for me to go with in the other argument, but that's too late now.
I didn't even think of him.
I know. That's what I'm saying is he's pretty much been driven into obscurity because he's on the Hawks. But with Adrian Cool, I think anytime someone brings him up or he's mentioned, he's as a top shooting guard. He's a superstar player, but he's never won anything in his life, and some of that you can blame on GMing, especially on the Hawks these past 3-4 seasons. But he was on a good team with the Pacers, good team with the Hornets. He's never won a championship. He's barely made any All-Star games. He's made 3. He's never made an all-league EBL team, which I don't put too much stock in that generally, but for him to have been a 29, 28, 27 point per game scorer and to never make any all-league team just sends up some red flags to me. Not even like a third team or anything like that. He's never been in hardly any consideration for almost any awards. He almost has as few as Tyree does. But with Adrian Cool, it's just he always seems to be talked about among the elites, but he can't do very much besides score. His rebounding is decent for a shooting guard, but his handling is terrible. He averages more turnovers per game than I would like my point guards to have. He has a career average of 2.8. He's not a terrific defender. I mean, he's not bad, but he's not great. He gets some steals. But other than that, and he's never been good from 3 either. So you have to design like a sort of almost weird, either balanced or inside offense around him because he can't fit in like a normal shooting guard would with an outside offense. He just seems like he's always been overrated because of his scoring and his attributes. I've never found anything particularly great about him. The game hasn't either, apparently, never giving him any accolades, and he's never won a title. He's played 675 games in his career. And think about how many have been on these bad Hawk teams. And he's only won 95 Player of the Games. Only 95. Only one Player of the Week award, no Player of the Month awards. But the biggest flag to me is his 95 Player of the Games when he's been on this bad Hawk team and he was one of the main focus on the Pacers and the Hornets teams. It just seems like he should have way more than that. It's just, I've always found him to be overrated, and I think that he's a good player, but I don't think he's a superstar in any right, and I don't think he's ever been.
All right, Hawk.
All right. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna pick Francisco Page. I feel that ultimately Francisco Page has had some great seasons. He's always been a great rebounder, although sometimes he's a little lower. He's a great shot blocker. He scores a lot. He's efficient.
Wait a second, Hodge. This isn't most underrated superstar, right?
I know. You're not letting me get to my point, though. My main point is think back, and think of one great team that he has been on. This is a player that, as a superstar player, has never even, I don't think he's ever even had a team as a fourth seed going into the playoffs the few times his teams have even gotten to the playoffs. And these are on some Trailblazers teams that were so-so, but this was with JB as a GM, and he couldn't build around this guy. Okay, so he goes to Denver, where Polo is his GM, and he can't win playoff games on Polo's team against the Minnesota Timberwolves. In the first round of the playoffs, they lose. You can't win with Polo as your GM, and you're getting, let's see, what was he getting? 26-13 a game. I mean, I know that his teams haven't always been great, but Francisco Page has not won a single playoff series his entire career. I mean, sure, he's won a lot of individual awards, but when you come down to it, he's kind of a loser. He's never won a playoff series. He's been on teams with great GMs, and they've never been able to build around him. I mean, he's on the Nets now. They're pretty middle of the pack in an East, and it feels like Francisco Page should be able to dominate, given the somewhat thin nature of really great big men, and the fact that he's averaged 21-12 his career, but he's never really dominated. He's never really led his team to a great record. He's never won a playoff series. He's had these great GMs, and they've been able to do absolutely nothing with him at all. And also another point is, after he left Portland, they became significantly better after he left them. I will not say the same for Denver, but Polo also left as the GM, which was also a factor. So I feel like Francisco Page, for being a superstar power forward, he's never really won anything, and if anything, his numbers have gotten worse, and he's not really as much of a superstar as he used to be, just looking at his numbers. I mean, Francisco Page. He's the loser.
All right. I love. What, do you want to say something, Tyler? Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to point out that I love that he picked Page and I picked Cool, because I feel like they're very similar. I mean, just in how, for their position, I feel like those are two of the biggest.
Can you imagine them on the same team?
Oh, that would be dreadful.
That'd be fucking disgusting. I think I might vomit.
Anyway, I was saying I love Hodge's argument that he's not a winner. He's been on. He was, like you said, he was on a Polo team with Pierre Lewis, and they lost in the first round. That says a lot about Page to
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota had talent. They had Marshall, though. Marshall is awesome.
But I'm pretty sure they put Marshall on Page, too.
Yeah. Anyway, but this would be a much better argument for Hajj a year ago when he was having his worst season. Because this year, the Nets team is really not very good. And Page is having a very good season, and he's got them second in the Atlantic, which is pretty good progress with that roster because it's bad. Seifert and Legg and all them are bad. So Page is actually doing some of his best career work this season. And as far as Tyler's argument goes, I think he probably made the best argument of this podcast so far in regards to Cole, because while Cool is like he's overshadowed a little bit, which may take away some of his overratedness, he's still. I mean, you ask like a top shooting guard in the league, Adrian Cool is still mentioned by most people, and that really stuck out to me was that 95 Player of the Game awards, which I didn't even notice before. But he's been the best player on the Hawks every single season, and maybe until this season. That's at least 4 years, like 82 games a year.
Right.
Then he was the best player on the Pacers, the best player on the Hornets, and he just doesn't stick out. And he's done a good job getting the crappy Hawks team to the near playoffs the past few years, but like this year especially, they should be way better than they are with Purvis and him, and
Yep.
even like PJC at shooting guard is pretty good. But Cool is just I coming into this I didn't think Cool was overrated, but Tyler really swayed me, so I'm giving him this one, and we are all tied up.
Boom.
God damn it. Fucking Adrian Cool.
I was gonna go with Paige. That's what I said.
I thought you were gonna pick Salvatore.
I was thinking
yeah,
about
you
taking
know,
him. I didn't know if he
almost-
counted as a superstar. That's
he
why I didn't
definitely
pick him.
does.
Yeah,
But basically, argument for Salvatore, same argument as Francisco Page.
Yeah, never wins, but it's
Yes,
different.
except maybe actually he may be even better stats. So.
Yeah, he won a playoff series last year, Salvatore, with the Magic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That's why I sort of shied away from him and went with.
I was
Page.
actually gonna pick Page until I remembered that he was having a huge year this year, and then I
Yes.
found Cool. So
Yes, if Hajj makes that argument last year on this podcast, he probably wins. But
Right.
Page is doing his best work this year, I think.
If only I had a time machine.
Now this is kind of a loaded question here. This is trying to like involve some more teams we haven't talked about yet. But
For all the crystal balls.
this is our last
loaded.
one.
This is a loaded question, so you guys have to bring your A game here.
All
So
right.
I gotta
It's
fucking wake up
kinda-
at
it's like a-
6:30 though.
This is a
It's-
two-parter,
Oh,
it's kinda
two-parter.
and
Alright.
I'll let Hajj can answer the first part, and then Tyler will finish that, and then Tyler can answer the second part, then Hajj will finish. So,
Okay.
Okay.
which of these 5 players would you most and least want going forward? We're going to answer the most first. Okay, so Steven Marino of the Hornets, Tim Ashford of the Cavs, Larry Riley of the Grizzlies, Alan Whitehurst of the Bulls, and Joe Pickens of the Sixers. Which
Alright, so-
player would you want the most going forward out of those 5?
The player I would want most would be Alan Whitehurst. I've said it before, driven it into the ground, and I will say it again right now. Point guard is the most important position in EBL. Maybe it's just a mechanic of the game. Maybe it's only just in the way this league is played out. But almost every single team that's ever won a championship in this league, that's ever competed consistently, has had a rock-solid point guard. Between these 2 point guards, Steven Marino is a very good point guard. His ratings are excellent. He does a lot of things pretty good. But for me, I feel like Alan Whitehurst has just shown he's getting better and better every year. He's gone all the way from 6. 4 years later, he's at 10.3 assists per game. His turnovers are about average, but they would probably go down over time. He shot incredibly well this year from the field. 43% from 3 is a massive improvement, and he keeps improving every year. He's still only 22 years old. I feel like he just keeps getting better every season, and having a point guard, a really like elite point guard, is harder to find than having a guy like Joe Pickens or Larry Riley that are both excellent scorers and do so efficiently, but they're not as hard they're harder they're harder to find than a great young point guard like Alan Whitehurst, who's already a very good point guard and he'll just probably keep getting better. Like Whitehurst reminds me a lot of Josh Grundy in that he's developing slowly, but once you get to the finished product, you'll have a very great player. And these numbers are on a Bulls team where he doesn't have a lot of stuff to work with, and he still has great assist numbers. And I just feel like point guard is the most important position, and he's the best young point guard out of the 5 mentioned. And that's who I want to build around. I want to build around a great point guard.
All right, Tyler, who would you pick out of the 4 remaining?
I'm gonna talk about someone I talked about earlier, and that's Joe Pickens. Again, I'm not sure why his numbers are down this year. There are many factors for that, but assuming that he will bounce back, like I'm pretty sure he will, Joe Pickens has to be the guy I would go with. I mean, when he was drafted with B plus, B plus, B minus, B minus ratings. He's gone up in outside. He's gone up in handling by 3 points. He's gone up in defense by from B to A minus. He's gone up in rebounding. He's gone up in everything, and that's just in 2 training camps. In 2 training camps, he has gone up that much already, and I don't see him ever really getting worse. This season's a little bit of a red flag, but I have to assume that he'll bounce back from that. I mean, you look at Whitehurst when he came in, his second year in the league, he averaged 8.2 assists per game, and he's gone up ever since. I like to think Joe Pickens will probably do the same thing, but Pickens had a giant rookie season, and like I talked about earlier, Hodge said guys like Pickens who can just score and whatever, but that's not all Joe Pickens can do. Joe Pickens is an across-the-board phenomenal player. I mean, he's getting 7 rebounds a game, 5 assists per game, almost 2 steals per game, along with his 20 points per game, and I don't see him slowing down. Whitehurst is definitely good, but there's nothing too special about him to me. He's not an elite scorer. He gets 10 assists per game, but he also has 2.5 turnovers per game, and there are a lot of point guards around now that are putting up around those same numbers. Whereas I look at Joe Pickens and I look at his rookie year and I look at some of the other things he can do and I look at his attributes and I don't see hardly anyone else like that besides established guys who have gone up in numerous TCs already. And if I had to pick one to build around, it's definitely Joe Pickens for me. I just think that he, he's one of the youngest, and he's probably the best out of all those guys. So.
Okay, so that's the first part. Now Tyler goes first in the second part. Which player would you least like to have out of those 5? All 5 are on the table here.
I would least like Tim Ashford, and Tim Ashford seems like a weird choice. But Tim Ashford is criminally overrated. Maybe not overall, but as the main guy to build around. He is not the guy to put on this team and build around. And with Larry Riley, Alan Whitehurst, Joe Pickens, Steven Marino, all these guys, even Steven Marino, who has his flaws, he's only a 2-year player. This is his only second year in the league. He has plenty of time to improve, to get better, to up his scoring, his field goal percentage, lower his turnovers. Who knows what he can do? Tim Ashford's been in the league 5 years, and he's been the main guy on the Cavs for all 5 of those years, and he has never broken. He's only broken 20 points per game once, and that was when he averaged 20.6. He's not an elite scorer. He's not going to be the guy who can carry your team with, if you need him to get 40 points in a game, 50 points in a game. He's never going to be that. He's going to be one of these guys who is like an all-around good talent, a 17, 7 rebounds, 4 assists per game guy, which is highly valuable. But he's not someone that you can build around, who you can just put other players around and it's going to make them better. You need someone to carry him offensively, and you need someone around him to distribute the ball since his turnovers are pretty high. There's just a lot that you need with him and the big thing for me is that he's had 5 years in this league to improve, and he's been stagnant all 5 of those years. He has not improved once. He averaged 19.8 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, and 4.6 assists per game as a rookie. His points per game from his rookie year in year 5 now are down. His rebounds per game are down. His assist point game are down. The only thing that's really up are his steals per game, which I can really live without. His field goal percentage is way down. He seems to be either the same or decreasing from year to year, and he is not someone I'd want to build my team around or put the future of my franchise around, because he's never going to be the guy. He can be a good role player, and he can be a number 2 or a number 3, but if I'm taking a chance on any 5 of those guys, it's not going to be Tim Ashford.
All right, Hajj, which of the remaining 4 would you least like to have?
All right. I'm actually going to counter my previous argument and pick Steven Marino as my least of the remaining four. Uh, I feel like Steven Marino, while his numbers look good this year, if you look at just his points per game, they're about the same. He went up, he's got 2 more assists a game, but his percentages have dropped like pretty dramatically. And his 3-point, he was shooting 37% last year, and now he's dropped down to 33. He shot 44% from the field, now he's dropped to 41. But I think the worst part about that is the Hornets have a lot better players around this year than they did last year. He's got Tashio Vega, he's got Sun Ma, if you add Javier Carlin, I mean, this team is a lot better than the Hornets were last year. I mean, other than Chuck Lamberson, I can't think of one guy they had. So in theory, Marino should have been shooting more and been more efficient. But now he has better players, but somehow he's less efficient and he's playing worse. And to drop so much in your percentages from your first year to your second year, I mean, it could just be a fluky sort of thing, but it just seems like such a sharp drop that it might become an issue that he's inefficient with his passing. And of course, his turnovers have, 2.7, 2.9, either way, it's a little bit high. It's higher than I would like. And I just feel that his percentages are a little lower than I'd like. And I feel like even though he's got with better players around him, he should have to shoot less, and thus he should be more efficient and not less efficient than in his first year. So that's why I would not want him.
All right, so
amongst these guys.
Very interesting choices there. I think it was kind of obvious that Tyler would choose Ashford and then Hajj would choose Marino because the other three are probably better. As far as the first part went, Hajj made some very good points about the point guard. I mean, it's obvious the point guard is the most important position. And Whitehurst is obviously better than Marino, in my opinion.
Oh,
and Tyler thinks he's not unique, which is I don't know about I don't agree with that because Whitehurst is. I mean, he's clearly a franchise point guard with his numbers.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that.
He's a dominant player, but I mean, you brought up the Pickens thing again, and I mean, Pickens, even as bad as he's been this year compared to last year, scoring wise, he's still made the All-Star game.
Right.
He's still one of the best small forwards in the East, and he's only in his second year. So, I think the first part I would probably it was close, but the first part would probably go to Tyler a little bit there, and then the second part, I think you hated on Ashford a little too much because he's one of the best all-around small forwards in the East, though. He's not a number one scorer. Let's get that out of the way first. He cannot lead the team in scoring and be successful. But as like the number 2 or 3 scorer, like he's been this year with the Cavs, he's because with his rebounding and assists and great defense, he's one of the best defenders in the league. I think he's a really valuable player to have, and I think I would probably take him over a guy like Larry Riley and maybe Steven Marino right now. And Hajj made a good point about Marino with his percentages dropping, but he's such a young player, and it's such a small sample size of 28 games. I liked this season last year. I like his improvement in assists this year. But I think ultimately Tyler won this on the first part, so overall Tyler gets the win here.
Woo!
Boo!
The one thing I will point out about your assessment of Ashford, Mofo, is you say he's doing better on the Cavs this year when his percentages shooting are way down.
I'm not talking about scoring. I'm just talking about his role is better defined on this team.
Well, I agree, but
now that he's not the number one option.
And I know I already won this, but I kind of wanted to discuss this with you a little bit. It's just you said who would you want to have to build around? Like who would you want to have as your guy to who would you rather have?
I said which of the players would you most and least want going forward. I didn't say anything about building your team.
Well, okay, but look at Larry Riley. He's a 25-point-per-game guy who's doing almost as much in assists and rebounds as Ashford is. And Marino had a big rookie year.
I just value Ashford on defense more than I think you value him overall. I just think he's an amazing defender.
I mean, I agree, but I would rather take a chance on Riley or Marino being a huge superstar than Ashford, who's been the same for 5 years in his career. So.
Yeah, you're right, but I don't know. I just value Ashford more as I think he's an elite all around player, and he's a above average scorer, but he's an elite all around player. Besides that, is what I'm saying.
The only argument I'll make for Ashford is he's never really had a great point guard around him, so who knows what he can do with that.
So Tyler wins. Now you get 2 minutes to talk about whatever you want. So
what do I want to talk about?
I will time you. You get to go right now.
Wait, hold on,
I'm just gonna nap.
All right, my 2 minutes. I'm going to talk about how awesome Eric Beck is as a point guard, because I have made the best move that I've ever made, and I will not have it go unnoticed, because I'm a genius sometimes. And Eric Beck was a tremendous point guard for me this sim. I took him from Seth. I literally took him. I just said, hey, Seth, give me him, and I put a gun to his head, and then he traded him to me. And this sim, as a starting point guard, Beck averaged 22 points per game, almost 8 rebounds, 7.7 rebounds a game, 9.5 assists per game. He had 2.2 steals per game, only 2.5 turnovers per game, on a 49% field goal percentage, 56% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. It doesn't get better than that. My team went 8-5, and Eric Beck, who has been criminally underused all these years as a shooting guard and as a small forward, getting his 17, 18 points per game and not contributing very much and being a perennial loser, is about to change his whole career around thanks to how awesome I am. Because I found his one true calling that he should have been, that no one else has ever thought to play him at, despite how good his handling has been, and his high assists per game, and his low turnovers per game, because I'm that awesome, and I did something good, finally, for the first time in probably like 10 or 12 seasons, or whenever I traded for Pierre was, and then undid that all by trading Pierre again. So, you're welcome, Eric Beck, for revitalizing your career and not making you suck anymore. Boom.
Like 20 seconds. You got 20 seconds left.
I got 20 seconds left. Otis Stone is good. Hodge sucks. Wayne Jones is a loser. Koo can disconnect all he wants. I love him. And Thug is still Asian, and there are billboards to help that.
What?
All right. All right. That's a great 2 minutes, sir. I enjoyed it.
Whoa. There's billboards to help that?
Yes. Go look at that post I made.
Go look at the WTF thread. And what is it? Is it general? In the general section? Or
in the entertainment. In Hodge's moderated forum.
Yeah, in Hodge's moderated forum. Go look at the WTF thread.
I don't think I want to after hearing these billboard.
All right. So I think that this about does it for the second debate.
Yeah, I liked it. It was good. I won,
Yes.
so of course I liked it. But
It was very competitive. You guys brought your A game again.
yeah, we did. I think I did a lot better than last time, and I think Hodge did a lot better than last time.
I don't. I think I did fucking horrible.
No, you
I had a nice string in the middle, and then I sort of
started. Yeah, Hodge he started a little slowly. Let Tyler get an advantage. Then he came back and he took the lead, but then he blew it again. So
yep, it was good. I enjoyed this thoroughly, and somehow we went almost 2 hours again, so that's good.
I'm gonna be like a car tomorrow, so thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's fun though. I enjoyed
all right. Let's sign off here.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Just remember, I'm the best. So, all right.
All right.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Until next time. Okay.
We'll see round 3.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.